Sometimes the most profound act of kindness happen in silence, hidden from the world, until one parent's curiosity unveils a teacher's secret that would move an entire community to action. Emma Rodriguez was a third-grade teacher who thought no one would ever discover what she'd been doing with her grocery money for 3 years, until the day everything changed. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Allay Tales. Let's get started. Emma Rodriguez had been teaching at Lincoln Elementary for 8 years, but the last 3 had been different. Budget cuts had eliminated the free breakfast program, and she'd started noticing something that broke her heart. Children coming to school hungry. It started with small signs. 7-year-old Marcus would fall asleep during reading time, his head heavy on his desk. Little Sophia would clutch her stomach during math lessons, too distracted by hunger pangs to focus on numbers. 8-year-old David would eat the classroom snacks meant for special occasions with a desperation that suggested he hadn't eaten since lunch the day before. Emma had taught long enough to recognize the signs of food insecurity. In a school district where 68% of students qualified for free or reduced lunch, many children depended on school meals for their primary nutrition. But what happened when those children arrived at school having had no breakfast, or worse, no dinner the night before? The answer was sitting in Emma's classroom every morning, struggling to learn while their stomachs growled. At first, Emma tried working within the system. She spoke to the principal about reinstating the breakfast program, but the budget simply wasn't there. She reached out to local food banks, but their resources were already stretched thin, serving families in need. She applied for grants to fund classroom snacks, but the applications were either denied or lost in bureaucratic delays. Meanwhile, her students continued to arrive hungry. That's when Emma made a decision that would define the next 3 years of her life. Using her own modest teacher's salary, she started buying breakfast items for her classroom. Nothing fancy: granola bars, fruit cups, crackers, juice boxes. Simple foods that could quietly fill empty stomachs without drawing attention to which children needed them most. Emma was strategic about it. She presented the food as brain fuel for everyone, making it seem like a normal part of the classroom routine rather than charity. Every morning, she'd set out a small selection of snacks and encourage all students to take something if they wanted it. The hungry children learned to grab extra items without anyone noticing, and Emma never asked questions. "Good morning, scholars," she'd say cheerfully each day. "Don't forget to fuel your brains before we start learning." The children loved the routine, but Emma quickly realized that her teacher's salary couldn't stretch to feed 22 third graders every day. So she got creative. She started shopping exclusively at discount stores and using every coupon she could find. She bought generic brands in bulk packages, storing the extra food in her car, and replenishing the classroom supply throughout the week. She gave up her daily coffee shop visits, packed lunches instead of buying them, and cut her grocery budget to the bone so she could afford to feed her students. The financial strain was significant. Emma was a single woman living on a teacher's salary in an expensive city. After rent, car payments, student loans, and basic living expenses, there wasn't much left over. But she found ways to make it work, because the alternative, watching her students struggle to learn while hungry, was unacceptable. Emma's colleagues began to notice the classroom snacks, but assumed they were provided by the school or donated by parents. She never corrected this assumption. In fact, she went out of her way to keep her food purchases secret, worried that if administrators found out, they might try to stop her due to liability concerns or budget policies. The impact on her students was immediate and profound. Marcus stopped falling asleep during lessons. Sophia's math scores improved dramatically once she could concentrate without hunger pangs. David's behavioral issues, which Emma now realized had been partly due to low blood sugar, nearly disappeared. But it wasn't just about academic performance. Emma watched her students' confidence grow as they felt cared for and valued. The morning snack routine became a time of community building, with children sharing and helping each other, creating a warm, nurturing environment that extended far beyond food. Emma's secret might have continued indefinitely if not for 8-year-old Lily Thompson, one of the quieter students in her class. Lily had been struggling at home. Her father had lost his job 6 months earlier, and the family was barely making ends meet. They qualified for free lunch at school, but breakfast had become a luxury they couldn't afford. Emma had noticed Lily arriving at school increasingly tired and distracted. The little girl would eagerly take advantage of the morning snacks, often wrapping extra items in napkins and tucking them into her backpack. Emma pretended not to see this, understanding that Lily was probably saving food for later in the day or even taking it home to share with her younger brother. One Friday afternoon, Lily's mother, Janet Thompson, arrived early to pick up her daughter from school. As she waited in the hallway outside Emma's classroom, she overheard a conversation that would change everything. Ms. Rodriguez, Lily was saying, "Thank you for the crackers this morning. They helped me feel better during the spelling tests." "You're very welcome, sweetheart," Emma replied. "Did you remember to take a juice box for later?" "Yes, and I saved half my granola bar for my little brother like you told me I could." "That's very thoughtful of you, Lily. You're such a caring big sister." Janet stood frozen in the hallway, processing what she'd just heard. Ms. Rodriguez was providing food for Lily, but where was this food coming from? The school had eliminated the breakfast program years ago, and Janet knew they didn't have funding for classroom snacks. That evening, Janet gently questioned Lily about the food at school. What she learned left her stunned and ashamed. For months, Ms. Rodriguez had been providing breakfast items for students who needed them, disguising it as a classroom activity so no child would feel singled out or embarrassed. "She always has crackers and fruit and juice boxes," Lily explained innocently. "She says it's brain food to help us learn better. And she never makes anyone feel bad if they take extra." Janet realized that Emma had been quietly identifying and feeding the hungry children in her class, including Lily. But this raised an obvious question. Where was a teacher getting the money to feed 22 children every day? The next Monday, Janet decided to investigate further. She volunteered to help with the morning reading program, arriving early to observe the classroom routine. What she saw confirmed her suspicions and broke her heart. Emma arrived at school with grocery bags, quietly setting out an array of breakfast items before the children arrived. Janet watched her teacher carefully portion out the food, making sure there was enough for everyone, but clearly stretching her supplies to last the entire week. The snacks weren't fancy: store-brand crackers, generic granola bars, small juice boxes, but they were arranged with care and offered with genuine warmth. During lunch, Janet approached Emma cautiously. "Ms. Rodriguez, I couldn't help but notice the morning snacks you provide for the children. That's so thoughtful of you." Emma smiled, not suspecting anything unusual about the comment. "Oh, it's nothing special. Just a little brain fuel to help them start the day right." "Where you get the funding for all that food? Does the school provide a budget for classroom snacks?" Emma's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, well, I just pick up a few things here and there. It's not a big deal." But Janet could see the truth in Emma's eyes. The teacher was using her own money, probably a significant portion of her modest salary, to feed hungry children whose families couldn't provide breakfast. That evening, Janet called her husband and told him what she'd discovered. Tom Thompson had been out of work for 6 months, and they'd been struggling to make ends meet. But learning about Emma's sacrifice put their own situation in perspective. "Honey, she's been feeding our daughter with her own money," Janet said, her voice thick with emotion. "And not just Lily, probably half the class. How long has she been doing this? How much of her own salary is she spending?" Tom was quiet for a moment. Despite his own financial struggles, he was moved by Emma's generosity. What kind of teacher spends her own grocery money to make sure her students don't go hungry? "The kind who shouldn't have to," Janet replied firmly. "Tom, we have to do something about this. It's not right that she's carrying this burden alone." Janet spent the next few days discreetly asking other parents about the classroom snacks. Most assumed they were school-provided or donated by the PTA. None realized that their children's teacher was personally funding the daily breakfast program that had become such an important part of their kids' school experience. The more Janet learned, the more determined she became to take action. She discovered that Emma had been quietly supporting not just the hungry children, but creating a sense of community and care that benefited the entire class. Children who brought lunches from home would still participate in the morning snack routine, helping to distribute food and making sure no one felt left out. But Janet also realized the financial strain this must be placing on Emma. A third-grade teacher's salary wasn't substantial to begin with, and supporting 22 children's breakfast needs would require significant personal sacrifice. On Thursday of that week, Janet made a decision that would set in motion a chain of events that would restore Emma's faith in community and show an entire school district what happens when parents discover that a teacher has been quietly performing miracles with her grocery money. She picked up her phone and started making calls to other parents in Emma's class. It was time for community to learn about their teacher's secret, and time for Emma Rodriguez to discover that she wasn't carrying this burden alone anymore. What happened next would prove that sometimes the most beautiful responses to generosity come from the most unexpected places, and that a teacher's quiet sacrifice can inspire an entire community to act with unprecedented kindness and support. Janet Thompson's first phone call was to Maria Santos, whose son Carlos was in Emma's class. What started as a simple conversation between two mothers would spark a movement that would change not just Emma's life, but the entire Lincoln Elementary community. "Maria, I need to tell you something about Ms. Rodriguez that I think you should know," Janet began carefully. "It's about the breakfast snacks she provides for the kids every morning." "Oh, those are wonderful," Maria replied. "Carlos always talks about brain food time. I assumed the school started providing them again, or maybe the PTA was funding it." "That's what I thought too," Janet said. "But Maria, she's been buying all that food with her own money. For 3 years. 22 kids every single day." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Maria's voice, barely above a whisper. "Her own money? But teachers don't make enough to—" "Oh my God, Janet. How much do you think she's spending?" Janet had done the math. Even buying the cheapest options, feeding 22 children breakfast items 5 days a week had to cost at least $150 to $200 per month. For a teacher making $42,000 a year, that represented a significant portion of her take-home pay. "I think we need to call the other parents," Janet continued. "They deserve to know what she's been doing for our children." Within 2 hours, Janet had spoken to 8 other parents. The reactions were universally the same: shock, gratitude, and determination to do something about it. By the end of the evening, word had spread to every family in Emma's class. Lisa Park, whose daughter Amy had struggled with concentration issues until this year, was the first to suggest taking action. "We can't let her keep spending her own money like this. It's not right." "But how do we approach it?" asked Robertson, whose son Kevin had mentioned the morning snacks but never explained where they came from. "She's obviously been keeping this quiet for a reason. We don't want to embarrass her." Janet had been thinking about this all day. What if we don't make it about the money she's been spending? What if we make it about appreciation and community support? The next morning, Janet organized an impromptu meeting of parents in the school parking lot before drop-off. 12 parents showed up, representing families from various economic backgrounds, but united in their desire to support Emma. "Here's what I'm thinking," Janet addressed the group. "We organized a surprise appreciation event for Ms. Rodriguez, and as part of it, we establish a permanent classroom snack fund, so she never has to spend her own money again." "I love that idea," said Sandra Williams, whose daughter Jasmine had been one of Emma's hungriest students. "But I think we should do more than just snacks. This woman has been quietly performing miracles for our children." The brainstorming session that followed was unlike anything Lincoln Elementary had ever seen. Parents who barely knew each other were suddenly collaborating with the passion of event planners, each contributing ideas and resources. Tom Henderson, who worked in marketing, volunteered to create promotional materials and coordinate with local media. This story needs to be told. Other schools probably have teachers doing the same thing. Dr. Patricia Williams, Jasmine's mother and a local pediatrician, offered to speak about the connection between nutrition and learning. Hunger affects everything: attention, behavior, academic performance. Ms. Rodriguez has been addressing a fundamental health issue. Miguel Santos, a local restaurant owner, immediately offered to cater an appreciation lunch. Any teacher who feeds hungry children with her own money deserves the best meal we can provide. But it was quiet Mrs. Anderson, grandmother of shy Timothy Anderson, who suggested the idea that would make their plan truly special. "What if we don't just raise money for future snacks?" she proposed. What if we calculate how much she spent over 3 years and reimburse her? And what if we make sure every teacher in the district knows they have community support for things like this? The group fell silent as the magnitude of her suggestion sank in. They weren't just talking about a thank you event anymore. They were talking about creating a model for a community-teacher collaboration that could transform how schools address student hunger. Over the next week, the parent network grew exponentially. Word spread beyond Emma's classroom to other grades, other schools, and throughout the broader community. Social media posts about a teacher who spent her grocery money to make sure no child learned hungry began circulating, and the response was overwhelming. Local businesses started reaching out to contribute. The grocery store where Emma shopped offered to donate food. A local bank volunteered to manage a permanent fund for teacher-led student support programs. The mayor's office called to discuss recognizing Emma's service to community. But the parents were careful to keep their planning secret from Emma herself. They wanted the appreciation event to be a genuine surprise, and they were worried that if she learned about it in advance, she might try to discourage the attention. Meanwhile, Emma continued her daily routine, unaware that her secret had been discovered. Every morning, she arrived early with her grocery bags, carefully arranging snacks for her students. Every evening, she clipped coupons and planned her shopping trips to stretch her budget a little further. The only change she noticed was that some parents had started lingering a bit longer during drop-off, watching her interactions with their children with unusually warm smiles. But Emma attributed this to the normal end-of-school-year sentiment as parents reflected on their children's academic progress. 2 weeks after Janet's discovery, the parents were ready to execute their plan. They had coordinated with Principal Johnson, who had been stunned to learn about Emma's 3-year sacrifice, and immediately approved the surprise event. In 25 years as an educator, Principal Johnson told the organizing committee, "I've never seen anything like this. Ms. Rodriguez embodies everything we hope teachers will be, and this community response shows what's possible when parents and schools work together." The plan was elaborate but carefully orchestrated. On a Friday afternoon, Emma would be asked to stay after school for what she'd be told was a routine meeting with the principal. Instead, she'd walk into the gymnasium to find the entire school community gathered to honor her service. But the parents had prepared much more than just a surprise gathering. They'd spent 2 weeks documenting the impact of Emma's generosity on their children's lives, collecting stories, testimonials, and artwork created by students who wanted to thank their teacher. On the appointed Friday, Emma finished cleaning her classroom and headed to Principal Johnson's office, slightly tired from another long week, but satisfied with her students' progress. 3rd grade was a crucial year, and she was proud of how well her class had performed academically and socially. "Ms. Rodriguez," Principal Johnson said, standing as she entered his office, "I need you to come with me to the gymnasium. There's something you need to see." Emma was confused, but followed him down the hallway. As they approached the gym doors, she could hear voices and activity inside. "Principal Johnson, what's going on? Is there a school event I forgot about?" He smiled but didn't answer, simply opened the doors to the gymnasium. What Emma saw inside took her breath away and brought tears to her eyes immediately. The entire gymnasium was decorated with banners reading, "Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez," and "Community Hero." Every family from her class was there, along with other teachers, school staff, and dozens of community members she'd never met. At the front of the room was a table displaying 3 years' worth of documentation. Photos of the morning snack routine, children's thank you letters, and a large poster showing the impact of proper nutrition on academic performance. But it was the sight of her 22 third graders, standing in the front row wearing matching T-shirts that read, "Ms. Rodriguez fed my brain and my heart," that made Emma realize this was about her secret breakfast program. Janet Thompson stepped forward with a microphone, her voice strong and clear. "Ms. Rodriguez, 3 weeks ago I discovered that you've been spending your own money to make sure our children start each day with food in their stomachs and love in their hearts. What you thought was a secret has become an inspiration to our entire community." Emma stood frozen, overwhelmed by the realization that her carefully guarded secret was not only known, but being celebrated by hundreds of people. "For 3 years, Janet continued, you've been spending approximately $180 per month of your own salary to provide breakfast for 22 children. You spent over $6,500 of your own money to make sure no child in your class went hungry. The audience erupted in applause, but Janet wasn't finished. Today, this community wants to do something for you. First, we're reimbursing you for every penny you spent feeding our children. She held up a large check for $6,500, raised by the parent community and local businesses. Emma gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Second, Janet continued, we're establishing the Emma Rodriguez Student Nutrition Fund with enough money to provide breakfast items for every classroom at Lincoln Elementary for the next 5 years. Another check, this one for $25,000, was displayed. And third, said Principal Johnson, taking the microphone, the school district is implementing the Rodriguez Protocol, a system for identifying and supporting teachers who are using their own resources to meet student needs. No teacher should have to choose between their own financial security and their students' well-being. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Dr. Williams approached the podium with a special announcement. Ms. Rodriguez, your story has reached far beyond our school community. The State Teachers Association wants to honor you with their Outstanding Educator Award. The governor's office has invited you to speak about addressing student hunger at the State Education Summit. And she paused for dramatic effect. The National Education Foundation has selected you for their Heroes in Education program, which includes a $10,000 grant for continuing education. Emma was crying now, overwhelmed by the recognition, but more importantly by the realization that her students' needs would continue to be met. She wasn't thinking about the money or awards. She was thinking about Marcus never falling asleep in class again, about Sophia being able to concentrate on math, about David having the energy to participate fully in learning. Little Lily Thompson approached the microphone with help from her mother. In her small, clear voice, she said, Ms. Rodriguez, you made me feel safe and loved every morning when you gave me crackers and juice. You made me feel like I mattered. Thank you for taking care of all of us. One by one, Emma's students approached the microphone to share what the morning snacks had meant to them. Some talk about improved grades, others about feeling cared for, and several mentioned how the routine had taught them about sharing and community. But it was Marcus, the little boy who used to fall asleep from hunger, who delivered the most powerful testimony. Ms. Rodriguez, he said, his 7-year-old voice serious and thoughtful, my mom says you use your grocery money to feed us. That means sometimes you didn't have enough food, so we could have enough food. That's what love looks like. The gymnasium fell completely silent, except the sound of adults wiping their eyes. Emma finally found her voice to respond. I need you all to understand something, she said, her voice shaking with emotion. You're treating me like a hero, but I was just doing what felt right. These children are my family. You feed your family. You take care of your family. It wasn't a sacrifice, it was a privilege. She looked out at her students, her colleagues, and the community that had rallied around her. But what you've done here today, this is what changes the world. This is what ensures that every child in every classroom gets the care and support they deserve. The event concluded with a community dinner, where Emma sat surrounded by her students and their families, still processing the dramatic change in her circumstances. The financial pressure she carried for 3 years was gone, replaced by a support system she'd never imagined possible. 6 months later, the Rodriguez Protocol had been implemented in 12 school districts across the state. The Emma Rodriguez Student Nutrition Fund had expanded to support 5 elementary schools, ensuring that no child started the day hungry. Emma had spoken at conferences nationwide, inspiring communities to support their local teachers and address food insecurity among students. But Emma's favorite part of each day remained the same, arriving at school early to set out brain food for her students, now funded by a community that understood the connection between a full stomach and a ready mind. The quiet teacher who had spent her grocery money to feed hungry children had become a voice for educational equity and community support. Her secret act of love had revealed the power of community action and changed how an entire region approached student well-being. And every morning, as Emma watched her students enjoy their breakfast and prepare for learning, she was reminded that sometimes the most important lessons happen before the school day even begins. Lessons about caring, community, and the difference one person can make when they choose love over limitation. Love the story? Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more incredible tales of teachers who go above and beyond. Don't forget to check out the video currently on your screen. You won't want to miss it. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.